The 2000s were an era where technology didn't just evolve, it jumped. Every few months it felt like some bizarre, futuristic new gadget was hitting the shelves, and the best part? Not all of it was useful, needed, or even good. Yeah, tech moves just as fast today with just as many gimmicks, but back then, it still felt magical. Nothing was sleek, nothing was connected, nothing was as slot-filled as AI. Not even those trashy plug-and-play consoles you used to see everywhere. And nothing worked the same way, if it worked at all. But that was the fun of it. This was a decade where everything was chunky, experimental, and polished, and sometimes straight up goofy. Every device lived in its own little universe, and half the excitement came from figuring out what the thing even did. It was chaotic, exciting, and unlike anything we'll ever experience again. Back then, technology still had personality. Every gadget looked different. Every company was experimenting, and every upgrade felt like you were stepping into a new version of the future. Whether it was a flip phone with a pointless swivel screen, a digital camera the size of a brick, or MP3 players that held a quarter of what we have now. Nothing was standardized, nothing was predictable, and that's why everything was so exciting back then. This is all a part of the tech optimism phase that we were in. Everything had a positive look, and the future seemed to be so bright. Thus, our outlook on technological developments followed. There was a sense of helping humanity, or a non-stop party with the electronics and upgrades put on the market. Tech hadn't replaced real life just yet. It actually tried to enhance it. So let's go back to that moment when the future came in weird shapes, loud colors, questionable buttons, and ideas that no one had fully figured out yet. And if you enjoy cultural lookbacks like this, feel free to check out my other content, like, and subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. We'll actually be jumping back to the 2010s soon with the trauma iceberg, so you might be interested in that. Now let's go back to the past when technology was still fun.
Hello, Moto.
Before everything became a sleek, black rectangle, phones had soul. They weren't just big screens, they were a fashion statement. And your personality and values showed straight through the physical design. Each one felt unique in your hand, specifically in the early 2000s era of flip phones. The icon of this period was undoubtedly the Motorola Razr. This thing had the youth in a chokehold due to its look, colors, advertisements, including a launch featuring Paris Hilton. And of course, the fact that it was a camera phone during a time when those two terms were exclusive from one another. This thing was an iPhone before the iPhone. And man, if you slammed one shut, you absolutely love slamming it shut. That clack was the most satisfying thing in tech. Another iconic phone of the era was the Sidekick. This phone was meant to be a step towards a cell with more applications, thanks to a slide-out keyboard. This is seen as the proto-smartphone by many, making texting easier, incorporating a web browser, and my favorite part as a kid when my dad had one, the best of games. Yes, I was a do you have games on your phone kid. And when he got me Alien vs Predator and this weird game Bob the Ball on there, I was hooked and I was in heaven. It wasn't sleek like the Razr or stylish like the Chocolate. It was chunky, a little awkward, and focused on utility, giving it a completely different personality, and that was the entire point. You know what? Writing this, I'm realizing my parents had both of the popular phones of Y2K. Anyways, then you had phones like the LG Chocolate, which had that addicting slide function that made it an expensive fidget toy and had an edible candy look. And the Nokia Brick if you wanted to have a phone that could just call and survive a direct meteor strike. Think about that though. A dozen different ways to open, slide, or flip a phone. We had clamshells, sliders, swivel screens, and bricks. Not to mention, all of these were indestructible. And when cell phones became a trend, there were add-ons to that trend. You know what added to your cell phone personality? Customizable ringtones. Everyone was an absolute fool for these, and depending on your personality, you either have your favorite song, the classic,
"Hey, your phone ringing. Hey!"
Or if you were a dumb kid, you'd end up paying for one of those Jamster tones. Those fools made close to $600 million in revenue through charging people for wallpapers and crazy frog tones. And with the number of times I see these commercials on children's channels, I know exactly where some of that cash came from. These, along with cell charms, ugly antenna lights, and more, made owning a phone into a multi-part experience. Nothing was standardized, nothing looked the same, and every phone felt like its own little world. This was basically the philosophy of 2000s tech. Phones weren't smart just yet, but they had soul. But while phones were fighting for your pocket, another war was happening in your other pocket, and that had to do with music. At the same time as cell phones were hitting the public consciousness, we see the rise of MP3 players. Before 2001, if you wanted digital music on the go, it was the Wild West. You had clunky players with 64 megabytes of storage that ran on AA batteries, looked like calculators, and required you to manually drag and drop MP3s one by one. In 2001, Apple released the first iteration of the iPod and basically introduced the world to the real MP3 player. Yeah, there were portable music devices before this, but look, the feel, the vibe, and of course the storage size of the iPod changed the game. The 1000 songs in your pocket tagline was no joke. The real soul of the iPod was that click wheel. While MP3 players before it were clunky and had poor storage, the click wheel solved a multitude of pre-touchscreen issues, but more importantly, it just felt good to spin.
Oh, that's that good shit!
It was the perfect blend of innovation and physical interaction. And with iPods came iTunes, which made music management and getting hands-on music through official means simple and easy. And we have to acknowledge that Apple, with these innovations, would help kill so much of what people enjoyed about the 2000s, such as the dominance of physical media and MP3 piracy, establishing the trend of digital purchases. But even after the iPod, competitors still tried to capture that unique and physical soul the 2000s were known for. You had players like SanDisk, Sansa, and the creative Zen, and of course, the most well-known rival, Microsoft Zoom. The Zoom failed market-wise even more so than the Sansa and Zen, but its pressure-sensitive zoom pad was the exact opposite of the click wheel's satisfying mechanism in a good way. It had a different texture, a different vibe, and was a final hurrah for companies trying to put their unique physical stamp on portable tech, adding to it and the rest of the dead MP3's legacy. If we're talking about when tech used to have soul, then the translucent tech era was when it literally wore that soul on its sleeve. While it started in the 90s, it would last throughout the entirety of the 2000s. The clear purple Game Boy Color, the iMac G3, I'm not gonna lie, I'm legit smiling just thinking about them. And that's because this tech trend was straight up a fun and playful statement, meant for nothing but to promote more of the futuristic optimism. Modern tech is about hiding the hardware, making a sleek, minimalistic box. Back then, they were proud to show you that circuit board, the batteries, and the little wires. It felt honest and gave hardware more personality. I mean, we can keep going with this one too, cause I know either you or someone you knew was rocking the Rock Candy and Afterglow controllers straight from GameStop all the way through the 2010s. To me, those were the ultimate expression of the translucent trend. They lit up with LEDs and you could see every single moving piece inside the controller while you played. When you were holding a transparent controller, you weren't just holding an object, you were holding a statement. That feeling of playful, visible complexity is something that we lost when everything became a smooth, solid piece of aluminum. But if translucent tech was the look of the future, motion controls were the movement of it. Aside from translucent plastics, gaming in the 2000s would come with its own set of trends built around it that would be adopted by and from other tech areas. I was there for the first wave of good motion controls with the PS2 iToy and played for hours. And of course the Kinect came along last for all the 2 games it was fun for. But nothing hit like when the Wii was released, which I have a whole video on here, so I won't go too in depth on what it did. The world was infatuated with the fact that you weren't just pushing buttons anymore, and that physical commitment gave the experience a whole different kind of soul that this decade of tech has. But before this, the decade was promising wireless everything. Cell phones, television controllers, and a plethora of past tries at wireless gaming peripherals had us all craving a truly realized no-cord future. But that meant trial and error. If you wanted a wireless headset or a controller for your console, you often had a weird piece of plastic sticking out of the front, because every company had a different plug and a different transmitter. I remember I had this super laggy wireless fight stick for the PS2, which I used once and never again. Mostly because I was not a kid that was about to pay for batteries like that. It just wasn't worth the hassle. But it did look cool, which was part of the course back then. But when that GameCube Wavebird hit and gave us a peek at what was to come, it was like everyone needed one. And if you didn't, you were stuck in the past. Like, this was a player one, I own this console exclusive controller. But nothing spoke to the freedom of the 2000s like cracking open your Xbox, PlayStation, and iPod. And I'm talking jailbreak. You weren't just a consumer, you were an owner who can install an invisible mod chip and transform that hunk of plastic into a multimedia emulator station. The companies weren't locking down their hardware like they do today, allowing us to edit the object that we purchased. The way my mind expanded when I got all those emulators on my Nintendo Wii and iPod after homebrewing and jailbreaking them cannot be replicated today. And I made a good bit of money jailbreaking iPods at school before everyone found out how to do it that year. This is one piece we haven't left fully in the past thanks to consoles like the Series S and X's developer mode, aka the main reason I bought my Xbox Series S. That spirit of user empowerment and open hardware, where one could easily mod the tech they own without getting banned or in trouble, is a beautiful representation of tech having soul back then. There were tons of other tech trends of the era, like the Tamagotchi reincarnations, living robot speakers like the iDog and IZ or IZ, however you say it, that ugly little thing, portable DVD players including the PSP, Video Now, and GBA, DVD burners, disposable digital cameras, headsets, and DVR, stuff that was part practical, part gimmick, and part magic. Before the sleek standardized designs of the late 2000s took hold, technology was in a state of chaotic experimentation. This period, often labeled Y2K, wasn't just a moment in time, it was an aesthetic defined by a deep-seated soulfulness in its design and function. The operating principle seemed to be, why not? Why wouldn't we release a controller with a unique shape that only works with our console for the sake of style and uniqueness? Said every game console out there back then. There was no established right way to build a website, a cell phone, a console add-on, or anything else. This freedom led to customization over uniformity, the joy of imperfect standards, and a culture of discovery. But remember when I was talking about how the changes brought on by Apple would change things? Well, those changes would hit sooner than you think during the mid-2000s. The chaotic energy of the era began to disappear around 2006 when the iPod was on everyone's mind. And the Wii, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3 were planted in everyone's living room. While the early UI of the Xbox 360 would carry some vibes of the early 2000s, like its console brothers of the generation, it would adopt the minimalist aesthetic sooner or later. The seeds of the minimalist trend, a stark visual contrast to the bright translucent clutter of Y2K, were planted and popularized, most notably by the iPod and the rise of Apple's clean design philosophy. Remember that era of the plain white look that so much adopted? The DS, the Wii, Xbox, MacBooks, PSP, Robo Sapien. The era when screens were getting thinner and everything was getting sleeker. The period where if you had Cheeto fingers, your controller would remind you to wash your hands. That mirror's edge looking era was here at the height of Apple mania. A whole year before the iPod Touch and 2 years before the iPhone. See, the iPod didn't just kill the MP3 player. All signs showed that it killed the idea that tech needed personality. The iPod, products like it, and others inspired by it taught the masses to value simplicity and ease of use. Hardware became either flat white, black, or metallic. User interfaces took away the extra decoration like the highly celebrated Futtiger Aero aesthetic, favoring the more flat or sleek design seen in Technosin, Dark Arrow, Dorfic, and skeuomorphism aesthetics. This change actually had its benefits, as it helped increase accessibility for users and increase tech speed. Sadly, it also erased the fun, experimental feeling that tech once had. And that lack of uniqueness gave way to uniformity. Technology would mature in the 2010s, and it felt like it would reach the consensus of screens being uniform rectangles, buttons being invisible, and those wild casings would be replaced with a more premium look. Things definitely look more sleek and easy to digest, sure. But man, it's also boring, less personal, and worst of all, more corporate than ever. Tech trends today typically consist of some new BSAI model dropping, a new phone update that has more of the same, losing some good thing in return for something that no one asked for, and other things like that. However, there are still some good trends out there, like the trend of trying to make more tech, such as gaming and even something as simple as surfing the net, more accessible to those who once had trouble doing so. But no matter what, I'll always miss the era when things were bright, colorful, and always seemed to be looking to benefit the user base instead of exploiting it. Something was truly lost in the evolution from the tech trends of Y2K. And that's the real shift brought on by the sleek, simple, minimalist aesthetic. While it cleaned our workstations and streamlined our lives, it also sucked the soul right out of our devices. We've reached the standard and it's efficient, it's great to use. Like, I'm not complaining about being able to work on a YouTube script while I wait in line for food. But man, it's quiet. It doesn't scream anymore. It's more like,
from now on, I'm normal.
It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it felt like the future belonged to us, not corporations back then. What was your favorite tech trend of the 2000s? And be for real, how did you feel about the translucent tech era that I love so much? Were you more of a fan of the minimalist period? Cause I won't lie and say those products didn't look cool. Like, look at the iDog and be serious. Tell me he doesn't look cool. I'd love to hear it all and whatever else resonated with you here. If you enjoy, cultural lookbacks are what I do here, and soon I'll be stepping into the 2010s like I said earlier. So if any of that interests you, please like and subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching, and please have a good one.